reset the play clock. They don't. With 3 seconds left, Daniels flips. He's got another, and this time it's Trent Scott. The big tackler was the extra offensive lineman. And what a night for the Commanders.
Was that the Cincinnati game?
That was the Cincinnati game.
Why did you come in with that?
Jaden Daniels' first touchdown pass to wish him a very happy 25th birthday. Happy birthday, Jaden.
Happy birthday, Jaden Daniels. 25 years old. The best years are ahead of you, young man, for sure, because this past year wasn't one of them. Age 24, some of age 24 was pretty good. The early part of age 24 was a lot of fun. But the latter portion of age 24, not so much fun professionally anyway, but a long career ahead of Jaden Daniels. Actually, I didn't know you were going to come in with that, and I didn't know that it was his birthday, and I'm sure they're celebrating. We didn't do a lot of Jaden Daniels conversation yesterday with respect to what he said the day before. In fact, after the show, I think I said to you, we never played any of the Jaden Daniels sound. And I think you said, yeah, there wasn't anything that great. And Jaden's not the greatest soundbite.
Yeah, he doesn't give you much to go on in a lot of quotes.
No, but I do think the fact that there was no real sign of, frustration or anger or maybe the aftermath of some kind of confrontation about being shut down. I think that's the part that was, I guess somewhat interesting. I think what he did, and I think that this is because he's savvy, is that he towed the company line. He wasn't going to create a stir about being sat and shelved with 3 games left, especially when there is some context around it. Make no mistake, though. If Jaden Daniels, if the team had a game on Saturday that was meaningful with respect to the standings and playoff field, he'd be playing. He would have played last week, and he probably would have come back in against the Minnesota Vikings. I'm not suggesting that there isn't soreness and that there isn't, non-throwing elbow fatigue or, that it was more sore 2 days after the Minnesota game than it was with the adrenaline flowing during the game. There's just no chance that he wouldn't be suiting up with a non-throwing elbow injury for a game that they need. Anyway, that's why we ended up not playing the sound yesterday, is it wasn't necessarily provocative enough, I guess. I got this from Gary Genzier. I don't know if that's Gary's last name. I don't think it is. Gary Genzier says, how about we focus on the positives? Is there anything from this season to take with us into the offseason that we can feel good about? Wow, Gary Genzier. I mean, glass half full. Sun's coming up. Yeah, there are some things that I think from this season we can take into the offseason as positives. And I think that they are, the obvious would be you've got an offensive line on this football team that looks pretty damn good. Like it's, is it an elite offensive line? No, but it's a really solid offensive line. And there's some depth to this offensive line when you consider what we saw last week with Brandon Coleman coming in for Laramie Tunsil. Brandon Coleman can play a lot of different spots. He's a bit versatile as a backup offensive lineman. But their starting offensive line, Tunsil Paul, Biotish Cosme, Connerly Jr. is pretty solid. Steve Suter suggested even yesterday, and you'll hear some of his film breakdown. You'll hear him break down the punt return for a touchdown and talk about Jalen Lane and also talk about Ben Sinnott's performance, which he liked a lot, and said that it was, one of the best performances offensively of the day for the team, especially as a blocker. He was very impressed with Sinnott. That was Sinnott's most active day of the season in terms of snap counts. But Suter believes that Coleman right now would be their best option as a full-time starter at right tackle. He's not down on Connerly. He just typically has Connerly, rated on the lower end of the offensive line. Recognizes he's a rookie and he's developing, but he likes Coleman as well. But that's one thing. Offensive line, certainly one of those got to improve in the trenches this time last year, certainly going into the offseason after the NFC Championship loss. And then I think that we've learned something about their running backs that are encouraging. Chris Rodriguez this time last year, before that Atlanta game where he got some run, was not a given to be back. Nobody was like in love with Brian Robinson Jr. Eckler was too injured. We didn't know what his future would hold. We just hoped he would be available for the biggest games down the stretch because they were better last year with Eckler than without him. He was under contract. That wasn't like a decision to bring him back that was difficult. He was under contract. During the course of the year, there was a lot of, why'd you even bring Eckler back? Well, because he was under contract. It's not like they signed him or re-signed him in the offseason. But I think you learn something that you can take into next year, and that is, you need a home run hitter, and you should be in search of a home run hitter. What you have isn't great, but it's also not a weakness on this team. The combination of Rodriguez, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, and Jeremy McNichols. Now, I think Rodriguez is a restricted free agent again this coming off season, so they'll have to make a decision on him to tender him. So I think offensive line, running back, and then in terms of players, I mean, back to the offensive line, Chris Paul was a 2025 discovery, no doubt. I don't think they expected Chris Paul to be what he was. I think for sure defensively, Jacob Martin was a discovery. Is Jacob Martin a, game-wrecking defensive end edge player? No, he's not, but he is certainly a starter if you're not strong at that position and a big part of a three-man rotation at D end. Javonte Jean-Baptiste was actually the third-string defensive end when the season began, or at least we thought that. I think they knew that Jacob Martin could play a little bit, but they hadn't seen it in a regular season game yet. But once Jean-Baptiste got hurt and left, it was very obvious that Jacob Martin could play, and then they lost Armstrong and Wise. Not in that order, the reverse order, Wise and then Armstrong. And Martin ended up becoming their best edge player because, remember, they had to, play Kinlaw and Payne and players that don't play that position. It wasn't just the lack of players. It was the fact that you then had to take healthy players and move them to positions that they weren't necessarily suited to play their best at. But I think Jacob Martin was a bit of a discovery. And I'll tell you what, I do think that they have a punt returner and a dangerous punt returner at that. I know that I went a bit nuts after the Raiders game saying, I don't know, man, he looks like one of those guys that's going to end up being very good at this. And the bottom line is there weren't enough opportunities. And one of the reasons was they didn't make other teams punt enough. The other part of it was when they did make them punt, typically it was at midfield, where it was an inside 20, inside 15, attempt, or touchback. Jalen Lane currently in the league right now, among guys with at least 15 punt returns, okay, at least 15 punt returns would be 6th in the league at 14.3 yards per return. And he's one of, it looks like, 5 guys with 2 punt returns for touchdowns. So only 5 guys in the league have 2 that were taken to the house. And he is one of those 5 guys. So is that the list? Am I missing anybody from the list of things that, Gary Genzier wants us to be positive and talk about the things that we learned this year that we can kind of take into next year. I mean, I think that it's comforting to know that fully healthy, you've got an offensive line that's pretty solid. It's actually pretty good. It'll be interesting to see at the end of the year because I haven't looked at every single offensive line in the league at this point, but there will be people that will do that and will rank the offensive lines, during the offseason heading into 2026. It'll actually be interesting to see if Washington ranks highly, top 10-ish. I wonder if it is. I don't know. I can't think of every offensive line. Coming into this season, we knew Philly's offensive line was outstanding and one of the best, but they've been banged up all year. That to me is the biggest takeaway. Did they get it right on Connerly Jr.? Probably too early to tell after 1 year, but he's trended in a better direction. And so we'll see. But they've got some depth there too. Again, with Coleman, I would guess that they're going to, cut Allegretti loose because there's a bit of a cap savings in doing that. Remember, they signed very late in the summer George Fant. Wiley's not going to be back next year. So, yeah, I think that's the number one for me. Am I missing anything?
I really don't think so. I mean, Mikey Sanders still has 6 interceptions through 2 seasons. How about that, Kevin?
Yeah, but I think what we learned about Mikey Sanders still, and basically this secondary, overall, and this is where, you can be critical of coaching, and we have been. And that is, you went into this season thinking you were okay defensively in the secondary and that you could cover people. And maybe, the pass rush and the lack of a pass rush after losing Armstrong in particular and Wise certainly impacted that. There's no doubt. A pass rush, if you're going to play man coverage, you better be able to generate some pass rush if you're just average in man coverage, and they were less than average. They changed to a lot more zone, and they played a little bit more man on Sunday against the Giants, but still primarily zone coverage. So if you're going to, think that you can cover with Sanders still and with Lattimore and with Amos and, the guys that they had out there, and you can generate a pass rush. Once it became clear that they couldn't generate a pass rush, mostly because the players lost, I don't know what took them so long to play differently on defense. Not to mention that even when they were healthy, all we saw, from that team in man coverage was miscommunication after miscommunication. One guy's sticking, one guy is passing off. There just was too many blown communications coverages that led to big explosive plays against them. That was, I think, more than anything, the specific criticism that's totally justifiable of the coaching staff this year is defensively, they seemed disorganized from the jump, really. And unless they were playing the Giants or the Raiders, early in the season or even late in the season, this was a defense that was really, really in bad shape on the back end in particular. And by the way, let that be a warning to you, because I can't tell you how many times somebody came on this show where somebody wrote over the summer, they have a really, really strong back end. The addition of Amos and Lattimore healthy and, Will Harris, and this is going to be, and Mikey Sanders still year 2. This is going to be the strength of their team, maybe. No, it ended up being the weakest part of their team. And yes, they lost players. They lost Will Harris early. They lost Lattimore. They lost Amos. I mean, every position group pretty much took a hit except for old man Wagner, who didn't miss a snap this year, and old man Von Miller, who didn't miss one calling this year. Kind of the irony of they're too old, right, is that it wasn't until Ertz got hurt that the two olds on the team missed snaps. It was everybody else that was getting hurt for much of the year. But that's neither here nor there. The bottom line is, we say this every summer. Beware of what you think you're seeing, because none of it matters until they start to play real games. And usually it doesn't even matter until they've played several real games in the regular season. That would be the one area, though, of criticism to me that is not even close to debatable. Like, you can look at them defensively and say, what did you really think you were going to be able to accomplish with that group playing as much man coverage as you played earlier in the year? You know, and why did it take so long to fix the communication issues? You know, there was the hero ball explanation from the defensive coordinator for a few weeks. If they would just do what they're told and not play hero ball, we'd be fine. They never were able to fix that. And the only real defensive competence came when Quinn said, we're just going to play with everything in front of us. We're playing almost 90% zone coverage. And it turns out that a guy like Mikey Sanders still plays that better because he can make plays. But not when he's in man coverage. Certainly not when there's poor communication on the back end. But anyway, what can we take from this wretched season forward with us through the holidays into the new year and be, hey, we learned that we're okay there, or we learned that he's much better than I thought he would be? 301-230-0980. Denton's going to jump on with us in 20 minutes to preview the 4 college football playoff games. Charch will join us. You'll hear from Suter. We've got NFL power rankings. We will definitely preview tonight's game of the year in the NFC, the Rams at Seattle. It looks like Devontae Adams is out. That's going to hurt the Rams, and it's actually impacted the point spread a bit, Max. We'll talk about that as well. I may have a smell test pick for you before the end of the show as well. Kevin Sheehan Show, Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, you can watch this show on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button when you get there. in a moment. 301-230-0980. What can we take that's positive from this miserable 2025 season into 2026? But before that, I got a quick, what do you got? ESPN.com just put something out early this morning. They simulated the rest of the NFL season through their ESPN Football Power Index numbers. They simulated the season 10,000 times and came up with basically scores for the remainder of the NFL games. The reason it's a what do you got is Washington beats Philadelphia 26-24 and then beats Dallas on Christmas Day 35-32 per the ESPN Power Football Index simulation. I actually like Washington plus the points. They're going to be in the smell test tomorrow. I promise you that. That line's been sitting there all week at 6.5. And I mean, the Eagles are getting bet over and over again. I mean, major one-sided public action on Philly tomorrow. So I think Washington's going to be in the smell test. But will they win the game outright? The simulation says not only do they beat Philadelphia on Saturday, they beat Dallas on Christmas Day, and then they get run out of the building in the season finale against the Eagles at the Link. So 2 more wins would put them at a 6-11 season. I could definitely see another win. It might be the season finale if Philly's got nothing to play for. But Philly's really in a seeding race in the NFC. Just thought that was interesting. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. For me, there are some positives from this season. The offensive line definitely turned into a positive, and they've got to re-sign Chris Paul. He's the player that has to be taken care of. And I would expect that certainly that'll be a priority for them. Now, if there ends up being some sort of bidding war, and I don't see that for Chris Paul, they can always obviously go back to Brandon Coleman. But I like the offensive line. I like the depth with Coleman. And, they can certainly draft and develop a little bit more depth in the offseason. But that's number one. That's the number one. Well, at least we feel good about that. By the way, let me begin and not forget. I feel really good about our quarterback. That's number one. But from this miserable season, what can we take from what we saw on the field and transport it into 2026 and feel good about it? The offensive line for me. And then a couple of players. I like Jacob Martin. I think that both backs, all 3 backs really, but we knew this a little bit about McNichols last year. All 3 backs, create a solid running back room. It's not, I would like, a home run hitter, a super explosive back. They don't have that on the team. That's not, I don't think, what Bill is. Bill had a chance a couple of times on Sunday to make that second and third level miss and make a much bigger play out of it. We haven't seen him be able to do that this year. Even going back to the Charger game, there were opportunities when he had his best game of the year. 301-230-0980. Let's start with Mike and Bowie. Mike, what can we take from this absolute horrible 2025 season, but feel good about it heading into 2026?
All right. Thank you for taking my call. I love your show. I'm a lifelong listener. So I'm just going to I have a question for you, all right, about something, and then I'll answer my question about what's the positive. Do you think the NFL, you're talking about the defense, how bad the defenses are, and I'll watch other teams and I'll hear always historically bad defense. Do you think the game has changed since there was so much protection of the quarterback and the way corners have to cover receivers and the PI? Do you think that puts defenses in a position where they're going to be, where the game's changing a little bit and they're going to be historically bad? Are we looking at something different? Or Jack Del Rio said something to me that was one of the 2 smartest things I ever heard in my life. Offensive line is one of the most important positions. And he said the hardest thing to do is to teach execution. He said everybody's the same size, the same speed, the same quickness, but about teaching execution. So do you think that that has something to do with historically bad defenses?
Yeah. So what's interesting, Mike, about your question is the timing of it. And the timing of it is we've seen an absolute resurgence of great defensive football this year. I mean, Houston is dominating with their defense. Seattle dominating. And look, last year's Super Bowl winner, the Philadelphia Eagles, were led by their defense throughout the second part of the season and through the postseason, and then had arguably one of the greatest defensive days in Super Bowl history with what they did to Kansas City. There's no doubt that for about a decade or more, the rule changes, the protection of the quarterback, by the way, just the kicking rules in the last couple of years, that's with the intention of hopefully generating better field position, bigger plays to score more points. They want that. But defenses adjust. And it's so interesting that you ask this. I thought about playing this on the show today, but I also knew that we had a busy show today and it would be an irritant for many of you. But it kind of went viral yesterday. And so, Max, I will ask you to pull it. And if we have time, we'll play it before the end of the show. Kirk Cousins yesterday in his quarterback, Wednesday press conference was asked a similar question, Mike, about, and it was specific to, kind of coverage reading and how it used to be versus progression reading. And it was like, it went viral because I think people are like, wow, this dude is going to be a great commentator, which he will be. He'll be a very good analyst if he decides to do that as a television analyst post-career. But defenses keep adjusting. In the last couple of years, we've seen defenses jump ahead in a few areas. And this year, with Houston and Seattle and Denver and Philly and the Rams and then Cleveland without an offense, I mean, Minnesota, there have been dominant defensive teams. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the postseason. Is it possible that we go 2 straight years with a defensive-led, team winning the Super Bowl? I mean, the Rams are great on defense and great on offense, so it'd be hard to say that they're led by their defense, even though their defense is awesome. Per DVOA, the Rams right now are the 3rd best defense in the league after Seattle 1, Houston 2. But if Houston won the Super Bowl, defensive-led. If Seattle wins the Super Bowl, pretty much defensive-led. If Philly wins the Super Bowl again, defensive-led. If Denver wins the Super Bowl, defensive-led. So we've got a shot, to see another defensive-led Super Bowl winner, which is unusual in this day and age. But it is an interesting question. Thanks, Mike, for that. Appreciate it. Did Mike have anything did he have an answer to the question?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to get this answer a lot. It really is the offensive line just gelling together. Yeah. I think according to some metrics, they're definitely top 15. I think they're rank 11 if you composite PFF and ESPN offensive line grades. So
11th right now?
Yes, 11th.
Oh,
currently.
Thanks for doing that. Yeah, I would have guessed definitely top half of the league and maybe top 10. So 11 puts them essentially in the top 3rd. Interesting. Anthony in DC. Anthony, go ahead. What can we take from this miserable season but feel good about going into 2026?
So definitely the special teams. And yeah, you can take some solace in the offensive line, although I think Biotis is the weak link. He gets beat by speed too often for my taste. But I want to push back on your secondary thing. I think the secondary is capable, but like you said, because we don't have any pass rush, it's hard to actually grade them based on what's taking place. I mean, between the last 2 years, think about how many dime drops we've seen over the last 2 years. I mean, just the quarterback is standing back there like a statue and just drops it in the bucket. You can't beat that. So,
no, I hear you. I'm 100% on board with that. I do think though that they learned something about what they are and what they aren't with the current group, and Lattimore's not coming back, I don't know if they're as much of a man coverage team as they think they are. But we're going to have a new defensive coordinator, and we'll see what sort of scheme change there is. You know, we'll see how he decides to play it with the talent they have.
In 24, Sanders still played
I know.
the outside and played.
Yes, he
man
did, and he
coverage.
played it well. Yeah,
exactly. So that's why I say we can't.
We didn't play very many good offensive football teams, though.
Well, that's true too. But I'm just saying the capability is there. They just need some help up front to prevent,
I hear you.
In fact, they're counting the 10.
By the way,
So
your answer to the question, special teams. I mean, special teams does include kicker.
Well, I'm in special teams overall. Kicker.
Right. Well, the kicker's a big part of football today, and we don't have one that is a 2025 kicker. We need next year that when they cross into the other team's territory and get inside the 40-yard line, to the 40-yard line, it's 3 minimum. They got to find that.
So the one we have now, what's his range? Because
his range is long, but there's a reason he was available and on the street. I don't know that he's the answer. They've passed twice in the last 3 games on kicks from the other team's 38-yard line.
Yeah, but I mean that may be true, but it's not like you can go down to Walmart and get a kicker.
I didn't say you could.
No, you didn't. But I'm saying the days of Mark Mosley and Chip Lowmiller are long.
I know. I'm just saying that you said special teams you feel good about. And look, they were outstanding last year, coverage-wise, punt and kickoff. Outstanding again this year, punt and kickoff. And it is a tone setter for them. They're very good at that. But the kicker, in terms of our special teams as a whole, is probably number 1 in terms of importance. And they have not gotten that right since they got here. Let me move on. Thanks, Anthony, as always. Nick in Virginia Beach. Quickly, Nick, go ahead.
Hey, I got 3 things. I'll rip them all. First off, let me retort. I think Biotish is a really good center.
I like Biotish too.
I said saying he wasn't it. Yeah. 3 more things. I think Jeremy Reeves is a really quality player for this team. He's a leader on special teams, and I think he moves downhill well from the safety spot. Number 2, I think we realized that Kinlaw is a good signing. I think he has a quick first step, and I think he moves off the line well. And number 3, I think that you realize Dan Quinn's teams aren't going to give up on him. They played terribly against Minnesota. I understand that. But a gritty performance against Denver and then a win against the Giants, you referenced repeatedly his record in November and December.
Last 4. Yeah, last
December
4.
it is, yes. But this team is not giving up on him, and that's going to be important when you want quality free agents to come sign here, because we've heard so much about this culture, and we haven't seen the culture necessarily fall apart, which I think is good because this team has a lot of holes it needs to fill going into next year.
Yeah, no doubt. If this was the old regime and you're having this season, it's even with the cap space, Dan got to the point where, first of all, Bruce was controlling the purse strings and decided not to spend. And even if they wanted to, you were only getting guys here that didn't have a lot of other options. Totally agree with that. Thanks for that. And I'm a big Jeremy Reeves fan, too. 100%. Denton will jump on with us next. We'll preview the 3 college football games on Saturday, but there's 1 tomorrow night. The 4 in total first-round games with Denton next.
Pick up your book bags. Grab your notebooks. It's time to go on campus with Denton.
Hey, give me my theme music.
Denton Day's with us every Thursday, and we'll do this again next Thursday before the quarterfinal round starts. But we are here. We have arrived at the 4 first-round playoff games. They begin tomorrow night. Alabama at Oklahoma. Norman will be on fire. That fan base is hungry for this, and Alabama's, heading into this playoff as one of the controversial selections. Denton and I covered all of that on last week's show. And then we've got a triple header on Saturday, which will be very exciting. But I do want to start with just one quick thing before we get to the 4 games, and that is this. If Alabama loses tomorrow night, does Kalen DeBoer get named Michigan's head coach the next day or the day after?
No, I don't think so. I bet that conversation has taken place between those two sides, but I do think DeBoer has said no. It feels like Kenny Dillingham is going to be Michigan's next coach. He's getting asked about it every single day. His answers are odder and stranger by the day. I don't know if you saw, they moved practice to Arizona State, did 2 hours late earlier this week. And when he was asked about it, he said he was playing basketball for 2 hours. Now, I don't know the history of Kenny Dillingham as a high school basketball player, but he's 5'6", and I don't know that he's playing basketball for 2 hours.
I knew he was short. He's only 5'6".
I had to look it up yesterday because I was, sometimes these players are pretty big. Like maybe he's actually, he's 5'6". He's maybe he has a great handle. I don't know. Like we remember Akil Carr, right? Maybe he has like an Akil Carr handle. He does not, but maybe he does. So I feel like he's going to end up being the Michigan head coach. I think, with Sam Leavitt leaving Arizona State, he was a really good player for them, and he was projected to be a high draft pick this upcoming year. With him entering the transfer portal, I think it is the evidence that Kenny Dillingham needs. As much as he feels like Arizona State is a destination job, it is not. They just don't have the finances to compete. So I think he's going to be the Michigan guy.
I think we'll see. I think there's a chance on DeBoer. What's interesting about that whole scenario is that Alabama fans are probably, mixed on Kalen DeBoer. I mean, if they lose tomorrow night, that's back-to-back 4-loss seasons. 4 losses is unacceptable in Tuscaloosa. And I just wonder whether or not they'll want him back if they lose tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's a unique situation because if he does lose, there's going to be a lot of people very upset with him. But it's also kind of embarrassing to have your coach willingly leave to go somewhere else when you're Alabama, because you've been at the top of the food chain for such a long time. So it's a completely different set of circumstances if you are firing him versus him saying, no, I don't want to be here anymore because I think there are better options for me. It would be a real gut punch, I think, if he leaves for Michigan.
That's, what that basically sets up as, I'm not interested in her anymore, but the fact that somebody else is really interested, no, I don't want, please stay. It might be one of those situations because I don't view Michigan as a better job than Alabama. I view almost every job in the SEC at the top of the SEC to be the best in the sport other than Ohio State and maybe Notre Dame. Maybe I'm missing somebody in that conversation. Michigan is a great job. It's a top 10-ish job, but it's not Bama. The issue is whether or not Kalen DeBoer fits in the South and whether or not Michigan and Ann Arbor would be a better fit for him.
Coach.
Yeah.
He just feels like he's better in that conference and not in the SEC. I mean, he took the Alabama job because the Alabama job was available. Dan Lanning said no. Mike Norvell said no. And he was ready to take a next step, right? Washington's a good job, not a great job. Alabama's certainly a better job than Washington, but it always has felt like to me that he is much more of like a Big Ten style of coach. And I think we've started to see that a little bit in the first 2 years at Bama.
All right, let's talk about that matchup for those that are going to just start paying attention. Oklahoma defensively has been an awesome football team, and that's why they are here and hosting as the 8th seed Alabama. Bama was, has arguably one of the best regular season wins of the year at Georgia. but they haven't played well down the stretch. So size it up for everybody, and who do you like?
I like Oklahoma. This line has changed, pretty significantly. Alabama opened as a 2-point favorite, and now I look at a sports book and I see Oklahoma as a 1.5-point favorite. I think the issue is that Alabama is playing their best football in October and not now. And that's the problem. Like that win against Georgia was, late September, and then they ran this gauntlet in the SEC, which is the reason why they're in the college football playoff, because there's not a lot of teams that had a tougher schedule than Alabama, and they played really well. But something changed towards the end of their season to where Ty Simpson, who was electric at the beginning of the year, making a lot of, Sunday level throws, and he was looked at as the, pretty consensus, hey, this guy's going to be a really high draft pick in the 2026 draft, to, well, now he just hasn't played that well. And he hasn't really played that well in a month. So it's not just the game against Georgia, even the game against Auburn, he wasn't great. Even the game against the layup opponent in Eastern Illinois, he wasn't great. Like, there's a lot of games over the last month where it feels like there's a lot left to be desired. And the problem is they can't run the ball. And you're going up against an Oklahoma defense that is going to, well, one, even if you could run the ball, they can stop the run. If you can't throw the ball, they can stop the pass. So you're in a really tough spot if you're Alabama. I'm worried for them. I'm on Oklahoma this week. I got it at +2. So I'm feeling really good about that line moving now to Oklahoma 1.5. But I just think Oklahoma is a better team, despite the fact that they also cannot score, because John Mateer is wildly inaccurate when it comes to down the field passes. And sometimes he makes some really questionable decisions on 3rd and shorts, kind of doing what we've seen Marcus Mariota do when you need 2 yards, and he goes, how about 20? Let me throw it down the field and see if we can pick something up, and that just doesn't work.
Yeah, for those that don't know, these two teams have already played this year, and Oklahoma won the game in Tuscaloosa 23-21. But Denton and I both watched this football game. Oklahoma scored on a pick six and like a 90-yard return, something like that, pick six. They blocked a field goal in the game. There was a muffed punt by Bama in the game, another fumble. Like they were basically doubled up yardage. It was like 400 and something to something in the low 200s. And they won the game 23-21. It was one of those true inside straight, like Oklahoma couldn't move the football. They weren't offensive at all because they typically aren't. And Bama had to self-destruct over and over again. Now, some of that self-destruction was caused by Oklahoma's defense. It's that good. But I think you nailed something. Like Ty Simpson, even if you project him to the NFL level, he's a quarterback that has to have everything around him work. Yeah. And they can't run the football. And against some of the defensive teams they face down the stretch, including Oklahoma and then Auburn even, and then Georgia, if you can't run the football, he's not going to be effective.
No, and that's a problem. And it's another problem for him. And this is a name that, Commanders fans might want to at least familiarize themselves with. Mason Thomas, the defensive lineman for Oklahoma, is going to be back. He did not play in that first matchup. He's been one of the better edge guys in the SEC this year. So if you're just a Commanders fan looking to see, all right, who are some of these players that we might be interested in the NFL draft, he's a guy to at least take a look at. He's a really, really good player, really dynamic player. And again, getting that addition back, he hasn't played since early November for Oklahoma. Getting him back in the fray is only going to make that defense better.
All right. So you like Oklahoma there. Let's move to Saturday, high noon. Miami, a team that maybe has something to prove now that they're in at Texas A&M. I mean, to me, it comes down to Carson Beck, plain and simple. What do you think?
It comes down to Carson Beck and Marcel Reed. Plain, like it's going to be a question of which quarterback makes the least amount of mistakes, because they're both going to make mistakes. Marcel Reed's an incredibly dynamic player, but Texas A&M had a cakewalk of a schedule until they played Texas at the very end of the year, and they got beat by Texas. Outside of the Notre Dame game, which that was a fun football game early in the season. So that was a good quality win. The game against Texas, though, was, all right, the wheels might be coming off at least a little bit, or the screws are loose. And that was, a couple weeks after that South Carolina debacle where, you have this crazy comeback, but you got down 30-3 to South Carolina. So I don't know what version of Marcel Reed we're going to see, but then in the same breath, Carson Beck, we know who Carson Beck is now, right? If there was any question about what he was, he's a good quarterback, but he's nowhere near the caliber of a great quarterback. And he makes some really questionable decisions. And if you want even the bigger cherry on top, and this is why I'm riding with Texas A&M, I trust Mike Elko a hell of a lot more than I trust Mario Cristobal in late game scenarios. Yeah. And I'm worried if Miami gets themselves into a late game scenario that Cristobal, who has not blown a game for them this year, feels like he's always due for one in a season. And I'd be worried if I'm Miami that one comes this weekend.
You know, the one thing about Beck is that, you know, the scene in College Station, he was an SEC quarterback. He's played in all of these situations. You know, the ACC is a bit weird, right? There are places you go and it's just not that big of a deal. There isn't a spot in the SEC, and he's been in those environments before. He's also played poorly in those environments before. Yeah. So I do think, though, do you agree with me that Miami has a line of scrimmage advantage?
Very slightly, but yes. You know, I think that's one of the things why both you and I were so high on Miami at the beginning of the year, is because they were dominating in the trenches, and that allowed them to take a little bit off of the plate of Carson Beck. And the running attack in the first, 4, 5, 6 weeks of the year was a really good running attack. And that's what he did not have at Georgia in his final year. It was very much the Carson Beck show, and that didn't work out very well. So I do think there's a slight advantage to the line of scrimmage. And again, this is another game that you need to watch if you're a Commanders fan, because Ruben Bain plays on that defense, and he is a very highly touted edge prospect that's going to be coming out in this year's NFL draft. So if you want to familiarize yourself with some edge guys, you got to watch Ruben Bain from Miami going up against a still good Texas A&M offensive line. I think that's important, right? Because you want to see guys play high at a high level against still good opponents. Like Texas A&M doesn't suck in the trenches. They're just not quite as good as Miami. So that'll be fun to see Ruben Bain go up against some of their tackles.
Yeah, Ruben Bain is special, and all of these games will feature, a ton of first-round projected guys. I'm guessing that Madison's not going to have any first-round guys. Tulane's not going to have any first-round guys. But every other team probably has at least 2 first-round guys. I'm guessing, I don't know if you've done this, I'm guessing Ohio State has the most.
Yeah, Ohio State probably. I can think of at least 3 just right off of the cuff, and then maybe 2 or 3 more. Yeah, Reams, Downs, Tate, and then maybe you can get another defensive guy at the end of the first round, and maybe somebody falls in love with an offensive, an offensive lineman at the end of the first round too. So they might have 5 first rounders.
All right, so A&M, Miami, you go A&M. So you've got the 2 home teams so far, Oklahoma and Texas A&M. Let's go to the second game on Saturday. It's a rematch from a game earlier this season that Ole Miss dominated, but no Lane Kiffin. Ole Miss at home in Oxford against Tulane. 3:30 kick for this one. I think Tulane's been a good football team here the last few years, and it's different than Madison. You agree with that, right? Like Tulane is a different possibility than Madison is. But tell me how you see this game. They played earlier this year, and Ole Miss won in Oxford 45-10.
Well, I'll let you know I'm taking the home team again, and that is not going to change the rest of the way here. But I will say Jake Retzloff is a little bit of a difference maker, where when they played earlier in the year, I don't know that he was necessarily in rhythm. And, he left BYU on some weird circumstances, joined the Tulane program later than most guys do in the transfer portal. So it's going to take him a little bit to get his feet under him. I do think you'll see a better version of him against Ole Miss, but the unfortunate reality with these group of 5 teams, and this is why the college football playoff cannot be viewed the same way as March Madness, is there's a massive talent discrepancy, and you get to put your hands on each other in this sport. So there are bigger, badder, faster athletes on the Ole Miss team that are just going to be able to do some things that Tulane is not accustomed to seeing other teams do. So maybe Tulane keeps it close. I would say they have the best opportunity of the G5 teams to keep it close, or at least within the number. But this Ole Miss team, even without Lane Kiffin, is still a really good team. And Trinidad Chambliss has a very unique ability to both run and make some big throws. So I think Ole Miss wins it. If you want to take Tulane with a 17.5, I don't think it's the worst play of the weekend. Maybe buy the half point to get to 18 just to be a little safer. But this is going to be a pretty impressive win, I think, for Ole Miss.
Can you stick around for another brief few minutes to talk about Madison?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah. I mean, I got a meeting at 12, but I can stick around for another 10
right. Denton's going to stick around because we're up against a hard end of our break. Because I do want, and I know that there are a lot of JMU alums in this market. We'll spend a little bit more time on, whether or not Madison has a legitimate shot at Oregon tomorrow night Saturday night, in the last of the 4 first-round games. We'll get to that next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. Denton's sticking around because we still had one playoff game left. He likes Oklahoma, the home team. He likes Texas A&M against Miami, the home team and the favorite. Short favorite. They're a 3.5 point favorite over Miami. He likes Ole Miss, laying the 17.5 against Tulane. And then we come to the dreaded, the scary 5-12 matchup every year. 12s beat 5s every year. Wrong sport. That's in March. So it is 5-12. Oregon at home in Eugene against James Madison. So for those that haven't watched any college football at all, let alone James Madison, let's start with Madison and tell everybody why Madison is here. What do they do well? What don't they do well?
Well, they got a quarterback that's a hell of a player in Alonzo Barnett. He tore his ACL last year, came back and won Sun Belt Player of the Year, and they put together a really strong season in the Sun Belt Conference and then won the conference at home. They're a good team in that particular league. The problem is they're going up against a legitimate juggernaut. I watched that Sun Belt Championship game, and defensively, I think they're really well coached. I think they fly around really well. They have a good coach who is leaving them for UCLA, but Chesney's a really, really good coach. So they do a lot of things really well at that particular level. The problem is, their quarterback he's a dual threat, but when it comes to accuracy, it's not fully there. And against a team like Oregon, you have to be damn near perfect when you're playing at a massive disadvantage the way that James Madison is going to be from a talent perspective. And I think that's where they're going to run into some issues. There's a couple throws in the Sun Belt Championship game that it didn't really hurt them because the opponent couldn't make anything of it, but those are the kind of throws where Oregon's going to be able to take advantage of. Oregon's a really good offensive team, but they're also a really good defensive team, and they just haven't gotten a lot of credit for how good they've been on defense.
Is Dante Moore going to enter the NFL draft, win or lose? Does it matter?
It does matter. I have no idea. I think we're seeing a trend, which if you're a fan of college football is great.
Yeah.
That these programs have enough money to justify keeping guys. We're seeing that with Lenore Sellers. And Dante Moore's the guy that has been No, he did not. In South Carolina, I don't know why I stay in South Carolina, if we're being honest. There's a better opportunity for him elsewhere, but he wanted to stay with his current team. I think there's a very real possibility that Dante Moore comes back for another year. Unless they win a championship, if they win it all, right off into the sunset, go to the NFL. And, odds are if you win it all, Dante Moore likely goes crazy in some games, and he puts some really good film out. But I think there's a very real possibility that Dante Moore is back next year, and that leaves only Fernando Mendoza as a guy that could be drafted in round number 1.
Yeah, that's the way things are developing. I mean, and even if Moore comes out, Simpson's available, it's right now, maybe those three. Moore for sure, maybe Simpson towards the end of the first round. It could ultimately be somewhere between a 1 and maybe a 3 quarterback first round draft at this point.
Yeah. It's not nearly as sexy as it's been in the last couple years.
Can Carson Beck help himself tomorrow night and in this run? What if he lights it up?
He could. That is a possibility that can happen. I have not seen anything this year that would suggest all of a sudden he is going to light it up. He does have the intangibles that is going to make somebody fall in love with him. And honestly, if a previous regime was here and this team needed a quarterback, they would draft him and then sing the praise of him for at one point being a top 5 projected pick that they got with a better pick. So he falls into that
Sam
category.
Howell.
Sam Howell. Oh, he was so good. He's going to be a top 5, and we just got him 5th round. Look at the value. You'd get the same thing there.
Here's the thing about Carson Beck. To me, you and I had this conversation earlier in the year. First of all, apparently the intangibles, the off the field, the coachability, a lot of that stuff is the red flag with him. I think that, and there's been a lot discussed about Carson Beck and going from Georgia to Miami and that process and the money and what he'd be like as a teammate, etc. But I'll tell you what, man, when you protect him and you've got a running game, he looks the part in the pocket. He's 6'4". He's he's 215, 220. He can throw the football. He can make every throw. The decision-making ends up being a bit of a problem. And that gets him in trouble. And he's thrown some absolute back-breaking picks this year. He had 4 in their first loss when they were undefeated and ranked. What were they at that point? Were they 2 or 3 in the country when they lost against
3,
Louisville?
I think. Yeah, they were 3.
Threw 4 interceptions in that game. 4. And I mean, 3 of them were just horrendous. And then in the other game they lost at SMU, he threw 2, including 1 in overtime, which was just terrible. I mean, it was awful. But when he's on, like he was against NC State, and Virginia Tech down the stretch, I think his completion percentage in the 4 games that they won, I know that they didn't play anybody, although the win at Pitt was, impressive. But I think his completion percentage was like 80%, threw for an average of like 290, and I think it's like 11 touchdowns, 1 pick over those final 4 games. I'm just telling you,
he's physically talented. There's a lot of physical talent there, but the problem is the brain is the problem.
Yeah,
right. He's kind of dumb off the field, and the decision making on the field is not very great. So if you can coach intelligence, maybe he's your guy. But it feels like, I mean, he's like 23. Like he should be past some of the things that he's doing, at least from a football perspective.
Yeah. Like
a 23-year-old off the field is going to be a 23-year-old. We were all 23. We're all idiots when we're 23, and we think we know a lot more than we actually do. But you would hope that some of the decision-making stuff on the field would have matured a little bit, and he still has something there that's holding him back a little bit.
Back to Madison real quickly. Do you give them, if I told you we had one of the biggest upsets, because if they won, this would be considered the biggest upset in college football history because of where it happened and when it happened. We've seen some of this, over the years, going back to App State, in Ann Arbor. That was kind of like one of the first of the lower tiers. But if it were to happen, how does it happen?
Well, it has to be Oregon shooting themselves in the foot over and over and over again. There's no way, there's no scenario where Oregon plays well and loses. That's not going to happen. You need Oregon to play mistake-riddled football. And we're talking Dante Moore having a Carson Beck kind of game where he throws 4 interceptions, and maybe there's a couple of fumbles in there, and James Madison's really able to take advantage. If this ends up being anywhere near a track meet, Madison's in trouble. I think there's a possibility where they can score 21, 24 points against Oregon. Slim, but if those things happen, a pick 6 here, special teams touchdown here, if you are asking James Madison to score upwards of 30, they can't do that against Oregon. And the problem is that Oregon should be able to do that against James Madison. They'll be able to protect Dante Moore, and if you give Dante Moore some time, he is going to slice up that defense. So I think Madison needs a lot of things to go their way to keep this thing even remotely close.
Give me including the 4 bye teams, give me your top 3 players among the 12 teams before this playoff starts. For people that are going to sit down and over the holidays, they're going to watch these games. Who are the 3 best players in the sport, or not in the sport, in the playoff?
Oh, God. 2 of them are going to be on Ohio State's roster. Maybe 3 of them are on Ohio State's roster. I think definitively number 1 is still Jeremiah Smith. I just think he's awesome. Yeah. I mean, he is a legitimate
wide
game
receiver,
wrecker.
Ohio State. By the way, not eligible for the draft this year, but will be eligible for the draft, and many people think could be the number 1 overall pick in the 2027 draft.
He's trending that way. I mean, we've seen some good freshman players over the years, but then to do it again sophomore season has been really impressive. I would say that Arvell Reese, the edge linebacker at Ohio State, is number 2. And then maybe we would put Fernando Mendoza at number 3 with Dante Moore and Ruben Bain, bringing up the rear if you want honorable mentions. But I would say that those 3 guys, Mendoza, Smith, and Reese, are the 3 best.
I mean, I think both of the linebackers at Texas Tech, Bailey and Rodriguez, are as good as any of these players in this. I mean, Texas Tech's going to be really interesting next week to see, how they fare in a matchup against Oregon. That's what is that Miami or is that the Sugar Bowl?
I think that's a Sugar Bowl.
Orange Bowl.
But maybe it is Miami. Now, Miami's
okay.
where the national championship is, so that might be the Sugar Bowl.
Okay. All right. You rooting for anybody? I'm actually rooting for the Canes a little bit. I'd like to see you and I both early in the season said on one of the probably a few shows in a row, we both thought that Miami was the best team in the country, and they weren't during the season.
Yeah.
They weren't even close. But in the trenches, with some of the bigs they have, O-line, D-line, they can run the football. This guy, Malachi Toney, is an absolute threat as a playmaker. I'm worried about the coach, too. Don't get me wrong. But I'm kind of rooting for Miami to at least make a run here to prove that they deserve to be in it. Are you rooting for anybody?
I would have a slight rooting interest in Oregon because I really like Dan Lanning, and I love a guy that stayed at his job when other big name programs have come calling. And to be honest, I would love it if the national championship stays in the Big Ten. So if it's Indiana, if it's Oregon, maybe a little bit Ohio State, though I would like to see somebody else more parity. So I would love to see Oregon come out on top.
All right. Give me your championship game and your championship winner.
I think it's going to be Ohio State and Georgia, and I think Ohio State wins.
Well, Ohio State and Georgia are playing the semis, right?
Oh, I guess they would. Damn. Yeah. I hate that. I hate the way that that's done. But so I guess they play in the semis, which means I go Ohio State, Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech might be able to get one over on Indiana. So I'll go Ohio State, Texas Tech.
And the winner is?
Ohio State.
Back to back.
Back to back.
What does Ryan Day do?
In a long time.
Does Ryan Day say, you wanted me out a year ago and I just gave you back-to-back national championships? See ya?
Yeah, I think he would do that first part. He said, you wanted me out. I just gave you back-to-back national championships. Now here's a picture of me signing a $14 million extension per year to stay here and become the first guy to have that kind of money.
Yeah. And they would say, well, we wouldn't care less about any of it had you not beaten Michigan this year. All right. Thanks for doing this.
Yep. See ya.
Denton Day, everybody, with a preview of what should be a great weekend. I mean, tomorrow night's game standalone. Norman will be absolutely insane, electric. And then to get, the high noon game before the NFL, people were wondering, why wasn't Texas A&M Miami put, in a higher profile spot? First of all, the 12 noon spot in college football is a high profile spot, has been for a few years. Ohio State, Michigan play at 12 o'clock. We've seen some of the biggest games of the year in that 12 o'clock window, but they're not going to put that game up against the NFL. Skins Eagles starts at 5, and then you got Bears and Packers following that. So you're getting Alabama, Oklahoma as a standalone, and you're getting A&M Miami as the two standalones with no competition. Tulane, Ole Miss, and Madison, Oregon will go up against the NFL. And actually, Tulane, Ole Miss, you'll get the first half of the game before Washington and Philadelphia kick off. I remember last year we had some of that conflict because they had the Christmas Day opponents playing on that Saturday, and the NFL outrated those playoff games. But I think it was a lot closer than people thought it would be. But this is year 2 of this, and this is awesome, man. To get home fields, I think if you're a team that got a first-round bye, it's great. But at the same time, wouldn't you love to have had a home game in your own stadium as a playoff game? If you went to 16, you would get 8 first-round games, all home sites. And maybe that's what you'll have in the future. I actually like it at 12. It's fine with me. I'm rooting for Miami a little bit because I had such a strong feeling about them early in the season. And I think they're really, really good and talented. But the quarterback is the question, as is the head coach. The quarterback could be, if he's on, man, and they go on a run here, they could easily win it all. I mean, they're that talented in the trenches in particular. But I think at the end of the day, we'll probably see Ohio State and Indiana in the final. The two teams that have been the best teams all year and put on an unbelievable Big Ten title game. We're going to see that as a rematch when we get there. And I think this time Ohio State wins for back-to-back. 2 incredibly good defensive football teams. We saw that in the Big Ten title game. There are some really good, we've talked about the good defenses in the NFL this year. I mean, the two best teams, the top two seeds, really the top four seeds are unbelievable defensive teams. Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas Tech. And then maybe the best defensive team in college football is the 8th seed, Oklahoma. They just don't have enough offensively to win what would be 4 games. And they would get Indiana next week in the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day if they win tomorrow night. Go Madison, man. That would be quite the story. I don't think it can happen, but I think it's closer than some people would make it out to be. This is not a 16 versus 1 in college basketball. It's probably not even 2-15. Man, maybe it is. Maybe it's a 2 seed versus 15 seed equivalent in the NCAA tournament. And that happens every once in a while. It's a lot easier for it to happen in basketball because you can shorten the games. If you've got one really good player or two really good players and they don't get in foul trouble, there are ways to keep games close. In football, much harder. But I think that these lower tier conferences have made have gained some ground. I would guess that this Chesney team, Madison team, is probably not the team that Madison fans would want in the playoff, maybe last year's team or the year before, but it's a hell of a football team. Really, really good football team. They hung in there with Louisville, a team that beat Miami early in the season. So there is that one sort of, result. Their one loss to Louisville early in the season, 28-14, was a close game. I mean, it was a 14-14 game going into the fourth quarter before Louisville pulled away in that game. They're 21-point underdogs. I doubt it. I doubt it seriously. All right. Charge next. Man, this season has flown by. One of my favorite things to do during football season is Thursdays, 11:25 with Church. And I think, my friend, we have reached the end of the road once again, because a week from today is Christmas Day, and nobody's working on Christmas Day. Actually, I shouldn't say that. A lot of people are working on Christmas Day, and thank you for all that you people do. But in this business, we have off on Christmas Day. So I think this is it, right? Are we done?
Yeah, okay. I mean, yes and no. I mean, typically what we would do in this scenario, like we do Thanksgiving week, is we'd shift to Wednesday. But the problem is nobody's working Christmas Eve either. All my co-hosts, all my hosts and co-hosts have Christmas Eve off as well. So, yeah, this is it. But you know what, Kevin? You and I need to talk in the playoffs. Let's just talk playoff football. Someday.
We don't do fantasy talk anyway. What's the point? We can do this through the playoffs. I'm up for that. And
okay, good.
Yeah, and I'm here on Monday and Tuesday of next week. So if you think there's any benefit for the listeners who would then be going into semifinal matchups or even finals matchups.
Yeah, that's finals. This is semifinals week right here, and I think we can safely say, having done this for many years, Kevin, that I bring no value to fantasy players whatsoever. So I think we've clearly established that at this point.
Yeah, that's not true, of course. At Paul Charchian on X on Twitter. It's always an interesting conversation with Charch. By the way, this segment is brought to you by IHOP, introducing the IHOP value menu, where all your breakfast faves are just $6 each every day. Where else can you get a big, filling, sit-down breakfast for only $6? Well, go to your Happy Plates with the $6 IHOP value menu, available every day at IHOP, $7 in some locations. I'll tell you what, man, the NFL has some games here. The Christmas Day games look like, not great compared to what they looked like when the schedule came out. But we have the game of the year tonight in the NFC. Seattle hosting the Rams. The NFC West isn't going to be over unless the Rams win it to sweep the Seahawks. But if Seattle wins, they've got a good shot not only for the division, but the 1 seed overall in the NFC playoffs. And by the way, I think a lot of people believe the winner of tonight's game is the best team in football. What do you think?
Yep, I agree with that. I think the winner here is the best team in football. And I'm hoping for Seattle just because the Sam Darnold narrative would have to change. And I love it when we've got these preconceived notions about who a player is, and I'd love to see the player throw off the shackles of that narrative and go do something amazing anyway. And it's the Rams. The brilliant part about this for Darnold is it's the Rams that have put Darnold on the narrative of wilting in big moments against pressure that gets through his offensive line. It was the Rams that did that to him earlier this year, week 11, when they put him on a 0 touchdown, 4 interception game. That was the worst game of Sam's tenure in Seattle. But the Rams also did it to Darnold in the playoffs with the Vikings last year. They put him on a similarly bad game. So I think the temptation is going to be to assume that Darnold is the player who the Rams have made him look like. But man, I love it when players overcome that. And I'm rooting for Sam Darnold in tonight's game. How do you feel about Darnold being able to hold up against the Rams pass rush and the rest of the Rams defense?
I don't feel great about it. The Darnold thing, I think watching last year, like even as he was going through the regular season, and you watched it even more closely than I, but he was still in that very high turnover worthy throw, percentage. Mm-hmm. And he was living right, as was the team. The team was dominant defensively as they went to that, season finale against Detroit. But that Detroit game revealed, the pumpkin, turning into a pumpkin nature of Sam Darnold. And I'm afraid it's going to happen again. And, last week he didn't look good against a Colts defense that played really well. The week before that, it was 6-6 at halftime in Atlanta. They had a kickoff return and a Bijan fumble in the red zone that completely turned that game around. Minnesota completely shut them down, even though they won the game. It was because J.J. McCarthy hadn't turned into an actual NFL quarterback at that point. Actually, it was Max Prosmer in that game.
It was. It was. Yeah.
He's not playing his best football right now.
No, he's not. But I'm going to give you the angles on why we can see Sam put together both a good fantasy game and a good real game against a team that has owned him. Rams have been worked by the last three quarterbacks they've faced, and they're not superheroes. Bryce Young was fantasy quarterback 2 against the Rams 3 weeks ago. Jacoby Brissett was fantasy quarterback 8, and then last week Jared Goff fantasy quarterback 4. This is not an amazing Rams pass defense. They're good. They're not great. Their run defense is better than their pass defense. Last week, Jahmyr Gibbs just 38 yards. And as a result of the really good run defense, the Rams see the 5th most passing attempts. So just on volume, even if Sam does make some mistakes on volume alone, he could end up with a pretty good fantasy game here. And again, I hope the narrative changes. I understand most people are not going to, in the semifinals, are not going to put their fantasy future in the hands of Sam Darnold. That would be
right
for the kinds of people who are bold enough to eat 7-Eleven sushi. That's, I don't think that's going to happen. But I still think there's a scenario here.
Is it available there? It is, but I don't think I'd ever do it.
I would never do it either. And especially not at like 10 p.m. You've had a few drinks, you're wandering your way home. There's the 7-Eleven. That sushi's like 3 days old.
No, look, there was a day a long time ago where you're rolling into 7-Eleven. It's 2:30 and you're feeling either really good or it's getting late early. But those refrigerated microwavable burritos were an absolute given. But I'd never go sushi. No chance from 7-Eleven.
No, the burrito. And in the old days, the burrito was like 89 cents. And you put it in that 10,000 watt microwave, set it for like 14 seconds, and the thing can come out searing hot. Yeah.
It was not a good decision the following day, but in the moment it was great. And you paired it up with probably some Hostess cupcakes or snowballs or something like that.
That was when the Hostess products were better. Remember they shut down Hostess for like a year.
Yeah,
and then they brought it back, but they had changed and worsened whatever ingredients are in it. And the products, they just don't taste the same. They're not as good, objectively not as good now.
Well, I always, and it's been a while now, but I was always by the way, I think the thing that you're thinking of is when there was something going on with the Twinkie, right?
Well, it was a union thing, right? So they didn't.
Oh, it was? It wasn't something with the filling in the Twinkie? Wasn't there?
It was not controversy about that. No, I'm happy to say. By the way, the best Hostess product, I'm going to rank them at least in 3 orders. Number 1, my opinion, apple pie. The Hostess apple pie.
And do you warm it up?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And by the way, exactly 18 seconds in the microwave.
18 seconds for the Hostess apple pie. Yeah. It's been a long time for the Hostess apple pie, but I absolutely loved the Hostess apple pie. All right, that's number 1.
Number 2, the ho-ho.
No doubt.
Nibbling the chocolate off of the ends of the ho-ho, and then you can unroll it with your tongue.
Yeah, but you're more patient than me. Yeah, I would try that, but it would last for about 3 seconds. But here's something we would do with the ho-hos. We refrigerated them.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
They were much better cold. Really good cold.
Never heard that.
Yeah. All right. So ho-ho 2, and then what do you go 3?
Ding dong. Which is really a ho-ho in just a different format. It's really the same thing. It's got the outside glaze of chocolate, the inner cake, and then inside of that, it's got the white cream filling. So really the same thing as the whole different format. But to me, that's 1, 2, and 3.
So was Devil Dogs Hostess or Drake?
That must be a Drake thing because I don't know that, and I don't even know what Drake is.
Yeah, Drake had similar products. They had ring dings, I think. That might have been. I can't remember which brand it was, but for me, ho-hos and the chocolate cupcakes were the best.
They were great.
The cupcakes were absolutely great. And how about the? I'll tell you what were really good were the mini chocolate donuts that Hostess had. They were
the
really
glaze.
good.
Yeah, the waxy outside.
They were very waxy.
Exterior.
They were
Yeah.
very waxy.
I have a related story for this. Okay, so this is the last job I had before I was in the fantasy industry. This is the mid '90s. I was at a normal office, and it had a secret Santa. And the idea was the 5 days leading up to Christmas, Monday through Friday, your secret Santa would give you increasingly valuable but small and affordable gifts. And Monday comes, and my secret Santa gives me nothing. Tuesday comes, my secret Santa gives me nothing. Wednesday, nothing. Thursday, nothing. And at this point, my coworkers are angry at my secret Santa, but I don't know who my secret Santa is. And one of my coworkers, like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure out who it is. And you're getting something on Friday. Friday rolls around. There is something in my inbox where I should be getting my secret Santa gift. It is the Hostess cupcake. You remember the Hostess cupcake tray of 2 Hostess cupcakes that they would normally come in.
Right.
One cupcake missing. My secret Santa had eaten one of the cupcakes and had given me one of the 2 cupcakes, and that was my secret Santa gift. The one gift I got.
Who was this coworker? I mean,
he was in IT. He was in IT, which might not come as a big surprise.
Yeah, not a big surprise. Well,
fully understanding the nuances. Here,
that would have been a return at that point. Because you couldn't re-gift that. By the way, I pulled up Drake. Okay, Drake was ring dings, which are the equivalent of the ding dongs. And Drake did make devil dogs, and devil dogs were basically, chocolate cake. Everything was chocolate cake with some sort of white filling, in between. Yeah. It was just the shape of it, essentially.
Is Drake still in business?
I'm sorry?
Is Drake still in business?
I don't know. I just pulled up their website, so you can still buy Drake products.
So they're still going. Okay, all right.
Yeah, because it was Hostess, Drake, and Little Debbie, right?
Yeah, Little Debbie's still around, going very well with the very underrated Nutty Bar. The Nutty Bar, excellent and
not
frozen.
familiar with the Nutty Bar at all.
Oh, really? Okay, so imagine like a Kit Kat with a thin wafer, but in between the wafers.
I'm sorry, I have to jump in here on the Nutty Bar. It is fantastic. Yeah.
Is it
a staple in my household?
I'm not a Little Debbie person. We're missing Tasty Cake was the other one. Tasty Cake had some good cupcakes. My friend Andy's family, they always had like the pantry was filled with Tasty Cake cupcakes every time you went over there. Plenty for everybody.
Get you a Nutty Bar now. Will somebody please provide a Nutty Bar for Kevin, and so he can see what we're talking about.
Right.
Thank
Max
you very
will
much.
Take care of it.
Thin wafers, a peanut buttery spread between multi wafers, and then the whole operation is dipped in chocolate. It is it's delicious, and the sneaky part, freeze them. Nutty Bar.
I think my favorite part of this conversation is in the part where we were discussing the Hostess little mini chocolate cupcakes. You described them as waxy, which is true.
Yeah.
There was like a waxy film that was, I'm sure it was very unhealthy, but it tasted great with a cold glass of milk on a Saturday morning.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A cup of coffee.
Absolutely a cup of coffee. All right. Should we talk more football or not? I do have a question.
Yes and no. I do need to talk to you about my fantasy music league.
Your fantasy what?
Music league. Because I need you in it.
Oh, I'll be in that one.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that one because you know why? You can't bet on music. So this would be a good outlet for me.
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
The prediction markets. Kalshi, for example, you can bet who's going to win Grammys, how many streams.
Yeah, the prediction markets, Robin Hood, all this stuff. I've been reading all about this recently. All right, let's real quickly for tonight though. No Devontae Adams, it looks like. So if you've got Matt Stafford, do you fear that?
A little bit. This is a tricky spot. Stafford has brought you to your fantasy semifinals. He's been great, throwing the most touchdowns in the NFL. And it's not close, by the way. His interception rate is tiny, just 5 picks all year. So obviously you want to start Stafford, but before muscle memory clicks in and you just hit submit, let's dig a little closer in on this. when these teams met in Week 11, Stafford had 2 touchdowns, not bad, but only 130 passing yards. That's his lowest output of the season by a mile. No Devontae Adams, short week, bad travel. You may have heard their plane had problems last night. The weather tonight is going to be cold rain, not driving rain, but cold rain and windy with gusts up to 30, 40 miles an hour. But so not disaster weather, but not great weather. Seattle's pass defense, and especially their pass rush, is very good. No opposing quarterback has topped 2 touchdowns against Seattle all year. The only catch with this is Seattle has played some bad quarterbacks, including the last month. Cam Ward, Max Brosmer, Kirk Cousins, Philip Rivers. This has been, other than Cousins, those are some really dicey quarterbacks. And by the way, Rivers was not good last week. It was great to see him back, Kevin. But the way that they were talking about Rivers in the game, you would think that this was the second coming of Otto Graham.
Well, it wasn't from a fantasy standpoint, but did you watch the game? Because it was a neck up, absolute, not a masterpiece, but from the neck up, given that environment, given that defense, and him coming in at 44 years old, man, there were some plays that he made, and they had the game won. I mean, really what they should have done, here's where Shane Steichen blew it. So I was watching this game. I think you and I talked about this. I'm like a big Philip Rivers fan. I think you are too.
Yeah.
And so when they kicked the go-ahead field goal from 60 yards out, he had completed a big-time throw to Alec Pierce on a 3rd and 8 or 9. All right, and that got him into closing in on field goal range. They were in Seattle territory. It's under a minute, but Seattle had their timeouts left, and I kept thinking they're going to need one more first down because Seattle's going to use these timeouts, and they've got a really good kicker too, and they went super conservative. They ran Jonathan Taylor basically, and instead of trying to get more yardage to basically make it less than a 60-yard field goal, but more importantly to turn it into a walk-off field goal. And he didn't have enough faith in Rivers. Rivers had already hit the big one to get him into field goal range. He had a really good couple of 3rd down conversions earlier in the game, the touchdown pass, earlier. By the way, Abdullah played really well. I didn't even realize he was still in the league. Steichen needed to let Rivers try to complete one more pass, just one more for a first down, because that field goal needed to be walk-off, and it wasn't. But still, I don't know. I watched it, and I was blown away with just how he came off the street and just seemed to play the game at a high level cerebrally, from a cerebral standpoint.
I thought the CBS crew was absurd. Andrew Catalan and Charles Davis talking about him like Rivers was playing this unbelievable game. I saw a guy who completed no passes over 20 yards, just 2 passes over 10 yards. His average distance of throw was 5 yards. He went 9 for 9.
That's true. He could not push the ball downfield, which makes it on some level more impressive.
Well, not really. And here comes San Francisco. I think they're going to see that. They're going to know Rivers has this limitation. Yeah. He can throw like 8 yards downfield. The ball is drifting on him. The arm strength is not there at this stage. I am nervous. I am nervous about Rivers for this coming week. And it's a great story. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. I'm not trying to, if you loved it, you thought this was fun, and it was fun. I loved watching him. I am a big fan. But at some point, you have to be able to throw more than 10 yards downfield. And I don't know that Rivers can do that based on the guy that we saw last week.
Well, I think part of it, too, was against Seattle, pass protection and having the opportunity for receivers to get downfield isn't easy. He took a couple of those, man coverage, outside shots, but maybe it'll be a little bit different. Although, God, their schedule, the rest of the way, as you mentioned, they got the 49ers and they finished with the Jags and the Texans. So not easy. By the way, you casually and you took it back, which I'm glad you did. But Kirk Cousins on the other side of the older quarterbacks was brilliant last week. Absolutely brilliant. And I would imagine that if you needed a quarterback this weekend and Cousins is available, that against Arizona, there's another 300 yard, 3-touchdown day as a possibility, right?
Yeah.
Especially with Drake London back.
Well, that's a huge factor, because otherwise you got to rely on Kyle Pitts coming up.
He had
big
2 practice squad
weeks.
receivers out there on last Thursday night.
Right. Sills, who dropped that touchdown
And Drummond.
wide open. And
Kirk,
Drummond. Right.
Kirk would have thrown for 400 had he not dropped that.
Whatever happened to Darnell Mooney? Darnell Mooney looked like he was going to be a nice complementary number 2 receiver. Absolutely disappeared in this offense, which is pretty wild. Brian, it helps that you've got Bijan Robinson, who who is one of the great pass catching running backs as well.
Good.
And credit Kirk for distributing the ball to a lot of different players and just make and do with what he's got. Bring back Drake London. Here's your scenario where you're starting Kirk Cousins, and it's a very specific one for fantasy. You're a big underdog, and you need to catch some magic. This is your opportunity. Kirk gives you the upside we saw last week, 373 and 3 touchdowns. That's because of, in part because of the opponent, right? Arizona's just completely fallen apart. They've given up 3 touchdown passes in the last month to Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, Matthew Stafford, and C.J. Stroud.
Yeah. They can't stop anybody. And it looks like Atlanta's playing to kind of win here right now. Like, they've got a little bit of mojo. Yeah. They really should have beaten the Jets. You talk about Mooney. He dropped a pass on their final drive that would have put him in field goal range. And that would have given them a win. And if they had won that game, they'd actually be alive right now. That's an interesting thing. What else? What's important for people to know going into this final weekend?
Well, it's just some of the guys that have got you there. We talked about Stafford as a dicey start. I'm going to give you another one. Dak Prescott, top fantasy quarterback, 5 on the season, been an every week starter. He's got the Chargers. So here's a case where you could start Kirk Cousins. And I've got Prescott ranked ahead of Cousins, but if you need upside, I don't think Dak Prescott has much upside against the Chargers defense. That has been awesome. They rank number 1 in passing touchdowns allowed, number 3 in passing yardage allowed. Only 2 quarterbacks have topped 1 touchdown pass against the Chargers this year. And with George Pickens a non-factor the last 2 weeks, the whole Dallas offense hasn't looked right. Pickens was crushing for most of this year. Then he had the bad game 2 weeks ago. I thought he might bounce back against Minnesota, but he did nothing last week either. So, Prescott, before you just hit submit on Prescott, just look and see who else is available that you might be able to start. And somebody like Kirk Cousins, if you need upside, I think Kirk's got more upside than what Dak Prescott's got.
What would you do if you've got Trevor Lawrence against that defense out in Mile High?
Yeah, unbelievable game last week. 6 touchdowns for him. By the way, can we get a little mojo going for Liam Cohen for Coach of the Year?
He's a bit obnoxious. Have you watched him get interviewed? But that aside, they're rolling. I mean, where did that come from? Because they lost to Mills and Houston, was their last loss. And it's been, by the way, I think the underrated part of their team, if you don't know this, because it seems like they and the 49ers are the 2 teams with double-digit wins that are flying way under the radar. I personally think Houston might be the best team in the AFC right now. And if they get in, they could win the AFC championship game. They could win the AFC title. But what is it about Jacksonville's defense, man? They're good.
Very opportunistic, too. Their whole season turned on their Monday night win against the Chiefs. When Jacksonville was able to go national television, beat the Chiefs, I think that was when they started to believe internally that team could, win any game.
Yeah.
And what I like about what Liam Cohen has done, well, I think he should be a better candidate for Coach of the Year. Unlike, say, Mike Vrabel or McDonald or Ben Johnson, he is doing it with a proven mediocre quarterback. Vrabel has Drake May, who's turned out to be great, and Vrabel gets tons of credit for making him into who he is. I'm not taking anything away from that. Sam Darnold's been really good in Seattle. Ben Johnson has gotten the best play, mostly the best play out of Caleb Williams, but still inconsistent play. I just think Liam Cohen has done it with a quarterback who's looked awful for long stretches of his career. And he's been able to reverse the trajectory on Trevor Lawrence. And that's really valuable. But we find out what Trevor Lawrence really has and where Liam Cohen really stands at Coach of the Year this week against Denver. Patrick Surtain is back. This is a great pass defense, an amazing pass rush as well. The secondary is great. Now we find out for sure what Trevor Lawrence has. Lawrence has been great from a fantasy standpoint for a month. I can't start him here in Denver because I think there's just, for me, it's just the matchup is too hard. I need a little further validation. But if they put it together here and Lawrence has another great game, I think Liam Cohen should move into the pole position for Coach of the Year.
I think that your description of Lawrence is mediocre. It's backed up by his performance on the field. There's no doubt. But his talent isn't mediocre. His talent is and has spoken to something much better than what he's produced on the field. And they've had, some coaching changes. I'm looking at this right now. The interesting thing about what you said about Liam Cohen. Right now, Lawrence is on pace for his lowest completion percentage of his career. He will likely exceed his touchdown number, but he also may likely exceed his no, he won't. I'm sorry. Rookie threw 17 picks, but he's got 11 picks. His passer rating isn't anywhere near the highest of his career. His QBR isn't anywhere near the highest of his career. He's had some bad games this year for sure, but to your point, recently he's been on fire. I mean, Arizona, Tennessee, Indy, and the Jets. The Chargers were that first opponent. Yeah. I don't know what to make still of Trevor Lawrence. I was a fan, man. I thought that he was going to be something else. I still think he could be.
Could be, and it might be, maybe this is going to be the season where it all comes together. He's going to set his career high, his career high in touchdown passes this year. And so, I think what Cohen has done is, look, nobody saw 10 wins coming, and they've got 10 wins now with 3 games to go. This is it's a remarkable performance, but this is, like I said, this is the big litmus test here is Denver. If Jacksonville can string this win together in Denver, no less. Now we're talking about a team that you can look at throughout the playoffs and go, all right, you can go to Denver and go win a game. If Denver needs and wants. This is a signature game for Trevor Lawrence right here.
Is anybody playing better than Josh Allen right now?
Well, Stafford, I think is your MVP choice probably, but Josh Allen just carrying his offense. The receivers
carrying
that he's doing
the
this
team.
with. Yeah, absolutely. And, James Cook has been good and a very valuable part of that offense. But at the end of the day, obviously, the Buffalo offense goes through him, and he's been fantastic running on the ground. And again, the receiver set that he's got, and this Buffalo will address this in the offseason. They have to. The fact that they are rolling out Brandon freaking Cooks, and Josh Palmer as guys getting long reps, Gabe Davis. They have gone just absolute retreads, and they're still able to get anything done through the air. Amazing to me what Josh Allen has been able to do with the receiver help that he's got. I'm a big Khalil Shear guy. I love him, and he's a solid guy, but he should not be the best receiver in your receiver room by any stretch.
Yeah, this is going to be, a postseason where Josh Allen's, not. I think when we get there, even if they're a wild card, and they still likely will be, New England's still in good position to win the division. But with no Mahomes and maybe no Jackson and no Burrow, it's going to be a lot of pressure on him. And people who haven't been paying attention aren't going to know that they stink on defense, that they don't have much around him. But there's going to be a lot of expectations for him to do what he's done the last, 2 weeks against the Bengals and the Patriots in the snow, and that is, go out there and carry the team to a Super Bowl. We'll see if he can do it.
I hope
we'll
so.
talk
I hope
about
so for his sake.
What'd you say?
I hope so for his sake.
Yeah, me too.
We're
I like
ready for Josh Allen to go win a Super Bowl.
Me too. Thanks for this. We'll talk Music Fantasy League next time.
Deal. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
All right. Hostess, Drake, Little Debbie, Tasty Cake Talk today. With charts, you never know where you're going to go. When we come back, we'll do NFL Power Rankings, and you'll hear something that went viral off of Kirk Cousins' quarterback press conference day yesterday. It's really interesting. That's next. All right. Last week with the injuries, Michael Parsons, the Packers lose. Obviously that's big. Kansas City hasn't been in our rankings for a while. The Rams, Devontae Adams probably out tonight, but not for the year. Man, they're just a couple of teams that I want to put in my top 5. I think there are 4 teams right now that should be comfortably in anyone's top 5, I think. And then there's a big debate among many for the 5th spot, but maybe not. I'm going to go 5-1, and then I'll come back to 5. And then we'll do yours, and then we can come back to the other teams that deserve it, because It's kind of crazy who I'm going to put in at 5 here. They haven't been in my top 5 all year.
Ooh.
But they've won 3 straight games. They've actually won 6 of their last 7 games. Now, some of the wins, like the Raiders and the Titans and the Vikings when they weren't any good, may not be super impressive. But the Chiefs, the Chargers beating the Eagles and then going to Arrowhead in a win-or-die game for Kansas City, even though Mahomes got hurt on that final drive and they had a chance to tie it. But if you watch that game, the Chargers were the better football team, the much better football team in that game. And Justin Herbert is still playing basically with like a cast on his non-throwing hand. I got the Chargers at 5.
Wow.
They're a 10-4 football team.
They're good. And
they've won 6 of 7. There's a toughness to them that you have with any Harbaugh coach team.
For sure.
But they got Hampton back. That was a difference-making, return last week. He averaged over 4 yards per carry on 15 carries. There's something about the Chargers that I think maybe we're sleeping on. They finish with Denver on the road. Their last 3 games, Dallas this week, then the Texans on Saturday. They figured out those Saturday games, December 27th.
Mm-hmm.
Texans, Chargers, one of them. And then they go to Denver.
Oof.
They still have a shot.
They do, but their offensive line is one of the worst and most banged up in
football. And they keep
football.
overcoming it.
They do, but they're going to go, like you said, they're playing Houston and Denver, 2 of the best pass rushes in the NFL.
They played the Chiefs, good defensive team. They played the Eagles, excellent defensive team. They got run by the Jags. That's the one loss.
It's there's levels to it, man.
Putting the Chargers in at number 5.
Right.
At number 4, even though they lost this game, still building a 21-0 lead. You got beat by a great player right now. The Patriots are still in my top 5 at number 4. And then number 3, I've got Seattle. And I don't trust them as much as maybe I would in the postseason, even a San Francisco, to be honest with you. But they are so good on defense. And they have the guy that's going to win Offensive Player of the Year in Smith-Njigba. Why aren't they a better running team? They should be a better running football team. I've got Seattle sitting there at 3. I've got Houston now at 2. I'm sorry, but this team, I don't know if they're going to lose again this year. They play the Raiders this week. Then they're at the Chargers. That's a massive game. They finish with the Colts. I mean, poor Phillip Rivers against that Houston defense in the season finale. It's going to be a game Houston needs to win, whether it's for the division or whether it's to clinch a wild card. But that's the team in the AFC that no one wants to play. No one wants to play the Houston Texans. I've got Houston at 2, and I think the Rams stay at number 1, even though without Devontae Adams tonight on what will be a wet, rainy, cold Pacific Northwest night in what is the game of the year in the NFC. Like, I could see them losing the game tonight. I still think they're the best team in the NFC. By the way, if the Seahawks win tonight, it's far from over because they finish at Carolina and at San Francisco. And the way the division standings, the Rams would just need to get back into a tie with them because I think their opponents, common opponents, the Rams would win a tiebreaker if Seattle lost one and the Rams won out. The Rams, by the way, because the Rams, remember, won the first game. The Rams finish at Atlanta and then have the Cardinals. So a much tougher finish for Seattle. That's my top 5. Obviously, I left a lot of teams that you might have in your top 5 out. And we can go through those after you give me your top 5.
So I'll start at 1. Number 1, Rams. They're just the elite team right now. And for everything you said about tonight, I do think that they're going to win. But again, if with no Devontae and Puka Nacua is messing around with streamers on a short week, I could definitely see the Rams losing this game. But the sky's definitely not going to be falling. Number 2, I've got the team that just came off a huge comeback win, which is I really could just put Josh Allen here at number 2. But
you're going to put Buffalo at number 2?
Yes, because
wow.
They're just playing. They're playing really well right now, and that offensive line. I was looking at those metrics, and they're number 2 right now, right behind the Denver Broncos. So if anybody is going to stand up to the pass rushes that are coming out of the AFC, it would seem to be the Buffalo Bills. So they're my number 2. Number 3 is going to be the Denver Broncos coming off that big win over the Packers. Bo Nix, like I said, I still don't trust him, but the Broncos are playing very, very well and very good complementary football right now. So for that, they are number 3. Number 4, the Seattle Seahawks. I still, for all of their flaws, they keep winning games. JSN continues to just be a dog, a monster. So the Seahawks 4, and then Houston's defense. I'm where you and I are in lockstep on Houston. I am kind of impressed that you had them at 2, but man, you're right about them maybe not losing a game for the rest of the year. That defense is so good, and the offense looks like it's starting to hit its stride. They're getting Nico Collins very active. So yeah, Houston number 5. I could see them, in the dance and in Santa Clara.
I mean, neither one of us had Philly in there. Neither one of us. I mean, Green Bay, we had super high last week. With the loss of Parsons, we don't have them in there.
Yeah.
I don't have Denver in there. You don't have New England in yours. None of us have Chicago, San Francisco, or Jacksonville, at this point.
Not buying it.
I mean, there are, let me add them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the AFC, double-digit wins so far. In the NFC, 4. Green Bay's at 9 wins after their loss last week. And, God, man, San Francisco, Chicago, Jacksonville. Chicago not so much under the radar because of the way they've played here recently. I mean, even I think maybe the loss to Green Bay was the most impressive result over this stretch. Actually, the win on Black Friday against Philadelphia is the most impressive.
Yeah.
The thing about the Bears, and we're going to find out Saturday night, what's the weather supposed to be like in Chicago on Saturday night? Because it was frigid in Lambeau last week. I know we're kind of warming up finally a little bit. Chicago Saturday night. Saturday, slight chance of rain and snow, and then 18 degrees on Saturday night. So we're going to find out, man. Here's one thing they can do. They can run the football. And they can make some plays defensively. That's huge, man. Chicago, Green Bay. I mean, it's possible Green Bay, if they lose to Chicago on Saturday night at Soldier Field, at 9-5-1, Detroit can't move in front of them yet. Packers are so good, and yet without Parsons, they're going to struggle to make the postseason. Who does Green Bay have after Chicago to finish up? The Ravens and at Minnesota. There are a lot of teams right now. It's going to be a wild final 3 weeks and a really, I think, interesting playoff, few weeks when we get there, because you're not going to feel like, they can't win at Arrowhead, or they're not going to win in Buffalo or whatever unless it's Mahomes. Those guys, Mahomes isn't in it. Jackson might not be in it. A lot of new teams, a lot of new blood. All right, I wanted you to hear something. This kind of went viral yesterday. Kirk Cousins is the starting quarterback in Atlanta. Starting quarterbacks, when they play on Sunday, hold their weekly presser on Wednesdays. Kirk's always great in these things. He's always thoughtful and helpful in these things. But yesterday he was asked about sort of playing against today's defenses versus yesterday's defenses. And Kirk got on a roll and sort of gave you an X's and O's lesson. Here's how it went.
You followed this week's conversation about progression versus coverage reads and all that?
No, but I'd love to get into it. I can get on this soapbox if you want me to. Like, I can get on this because I lived the transfer. I lived the jump.
Right.
So I came into the league, even at Michigan State, it was you see coverage and you pick a side and you basically take 5 eligibles down to 2, down to your check down. And so you cut the field in half, and it was, I got single high, I'm going, outside the red line to inside to my back. And you're really only thinking about 3 eligibles because the other 2 over here were meant for split safety, and I got single high. And so it kind of protected you. And then sometimes you would alert that other side if you got pressure. So you'd be like, I'm working this route versus split safety or pressure. If I get single high, no pressure, then I work the other side. So that was everything was, single high, split safety, pressure, quarters, off, bump, man zone, all these things. But what happened was defenses got so good at disguising it that I would be so stressed going into games going, the whole game plan is built on, is it single high or split safety? And I can't see if it's single high or split safety. Like, these defenses are just making it muddy until I'm 3 steps into my drop. So coaches started to realize, like, if we ask the quarterback to do that, it's going to be really hard because defenses know that's the game we're playing. They're not going to let us play it. So then it started to become, let's just give you pure progressions and let's just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then, that has its pros and cons. I remember when Kevin O'Connell was bringing a lot of pure progression reads back to him with me from LA back to Minnesota. It was like, whoa, like I got to get back to the dagger backside after already exhausting this progression. Like, that's a lot. I mean, in my mind, like, I'm used to kind of simplifying it and cutting the field in half. So, had to kind of work through that and get to where that was more natural. And then there's a lot of positives of it too, where you're not stressing as much during the week about what if I can't see coverage, because you say, well, it's okay. I don't have to see coverage. Seeing it can be a benefit, but it's more after the snap, where are they going? And I can just kind of progress through. But there's no doubt with the way the pass rush is, if you truly try to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you're going to get sack fumbled a lot. So there's still a level of, it's pure progression, but like I got to rule him out pretty quick here so I can get to the backside because that guy's coming around the hump quick.
There was a lot more to this. I actually watched the whole thing last night. It was actually about 10 minutes in length. We just played 2 minutes of it, and that's the 2 minutes that kind of went viral. But I want to make sure that kind of everybody understands that. So for a long period of time, and I remember having conversations with, especially when Mike Shanahan was here, coverage reading versus progression reading for the quarterback. Coverage, as Kirk said, is you see pre-snap what the defense is in, and you work 1/2 of the field. You essentially eliminate 2 eligibles. You've got 5, including your back, who ends up typically being the check down, and you're working one side of the field. The 2 receivers, maybe it's a tight end and a receiver, and then you've got your check down. And defenses this has been by the way, a very recent kind of hot topic in football about how a lot of quarterbacks and a lot of offensive coordinators have had to go back to the old days of progression reading, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, rather than coverage reading. Progression is reading post snap for the most part. I think, one of these, I've watched a bunch of these things over the years. Kirk did a really good job of explaining it. He's going to be an excellent analyst if he decides to go that route. Remember, he did it last year in the postseason for ESPN and ABC. And I think he did he didn't do a game, but he did kind of the studio or the on-field thing. But I've watched a lot of this stuff recently, and one of the things that you come away with is, man, we can, as much as we love football and as much as we try, for those of us that try to really digest it and learn it, it is so beyond us at that position. It is such a hard position to play. So when we sit here as fans and me as a show host on Monday and say, man, he just didn't read it quickly enough and he didn't get to where he needed to get to. And oh my God, that quarterback missed a wide open guy. Like, we just don't know what we're talking about more times than not. You really have to lean on really the team and the offensive coordinator and the quarterback, because they really know because they know how the quarterback was supposed to read it out and whether or not the receivers did the right thing and whether or not protection was handled and called correctly. But what Kirk was really explaining was he's gone through, as others have too, this era of going from coverage to progression reading. And what he said about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he's like, it's really hard to get to 5 if you don't read it out super quickly. And this is where you see, the older, more experienced quarterbacks that are good at this, where it's like, oh my God, they went 1, 2, 3, 4. He got to 4. It's hard to hold up in pass pro to get to 4. And if you're not fast and you can't eliminate 1, 2 super quickly, you'll never get to 3, 4, or 5. And that's where, the offensive coordinators or the head coaches who are offensive in nature, like they got, how could Caleb Williams at this point be really good at that yet? To be able to immediately eliminate, 1 and 2 so he could get to 3, 4, and 5 before the pressure comes. Kirk went on to talk about how in that game last Thursday night against Tampa Bay, if you were watching it, they were down 28-14. There were 3 straight scoring drives, 2 touchdown drives, and then they got the ball back needing a field goal. He actually, after a completion for like 17 yards, got sacked and fumbled. And he ended up recovering the fumble. They kept possession. They had to overcome a 3rd and 28 to eventually get into field goal range and to kick the game winner. But he said on the fumble, he's like, it was one of those, I had to get to 5, which was the backside dagger route. And it was wide open when we watched it on tape. But I didn't get through 1, 2, and 3 quickly enough. And I should have, and I did multiple times during the game. But in this particular instance, I had to let it, play out a little bit longer. And I got sacked. And yeah, I thought he's very good at that. I've watched a lot of his press conferences over the years. He's one that can really communicate. Obviously, it's one of the reasons for the success that he's had. But it really does highlight, as much as we like to think, and as much detail and as much as you are into it as a passion, like you really want to know, and you don't know. You don't know. And you know what? 90% of the people that do what I do or do it on TV, they don't know either. And he just told you, going from coverage, as defenses started to become much better at disguising, it became much harder pre-snap to diagnose. So now you're back to progression era reading out of defenses. I thought it was interesting. When we come back, you'll hear what Steve Suter said yesterday about Jalen Lane's punt return, what he thinks about Ben Sinnott after watching him replace Zach Ertz on Sunday, and a few other things. That's next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. From Henry, playoff scenario guy. You forgot about the 49ers. They win a 3-way tiebreaker with Seattle and the Rams. Yeah, I think that's true. If the 49ers were to go 13-4, that means they'd have to win their final 3 games against the Colts, Bears, and Seahawks. But I think you're right. I think they would win. Can you imagine 3 teams at 13-4? That possibility exists in the NFC West. I would imagine that if all 3 of those teams are 13-4, that's a first ever with 3 teams winning 13 or more. Last year in the NFC North, you had Minnesota and Detroit. Minnesota was 15-2, Detroit was 14-3, and Green Bay was 11-6. That was 15-2, 14-3, 11-6. Wow. So 13-4, 13-4, 13-4. That'd be one hell of a tiebreaker. I'm telling you, the end of the season, you don't have a winner currently in the AFC East. You don't have a winner in the AFC North. You don't have a winner in the AFC South. You don't have a winner yet in the AFC West. The NFC East is getting near completed. The NFC North still open. NFC South still open. NFC West still open. This has been and is going to be a phenomenal finish to the NFL season. Just all of the division races right now, of the 8, 7 clearly still in play, and it's going to come down to the final 2 weeks at the very least. There are a couple of clinching scenarios before then. Philly's probably, if Philly wins or Dallas loses this weekend, it's over. The only way Dallas can win the division, the only way they can get in the playoffs, is to win out and have Philly lose out. Philly's not losing to Washington twice. They might lose to Buffalo. They're not losing to Washington twice. By the way, remember, earlier in the season when we were starting to talk about, could you go 9-8? And I'm like, no way. It's probably you're going to need 10-7 minimum, maybe 11-6 like last year with Green Bay to make the NFC playoffs. And right now, the 7 seed is Green Bay at 9-4-1. So, yeah, 10-7 is not going to cut it this year in the NFC. Probably going to have to be at least where Green Bay will be, which would be 10-6-1 if they were to lose 2 and win 1. That might be enough to snag the 7 seed. All right. Steve Suter joined me on my podcast yesterday with a film breakdown. I wanted to play some of it for you. I took kind of 3 chunks and blended them into one, where, first of all, he talks about Jalen Lane and the punt return and what he likes about Jalen Lane as a punt returner. Number 2, you're going to hear him as he starts his offensive grades mention Ben Sinnott, and he talks about Sinnott's game against the Giants. And then lastly, I wanted him to kind of assess Kroski Merritt a little bit after, getting all of those carries in the game Sunday against the Giants. It's about 10 minutes. Here it is.
You and I hit on this early, and it might have been the first game I watched him. I really like him as a punt returner.
Yeah.
I like his mentality back there. I like his initial first steps every time. And this is an example of it. This is sticking one foot in the ground. He as soon as he catches it, you could tell he kind of wants to go to the right, and notices immediately he's got color outside of him, sticks his foot in the ground hard, and he's getting upfield. And this is my style of returning kicks. I like guys that want to get north, because the majority of the time, the 10 yards is more valuable than you think you're going to be able to get outside and go for 70. You're going to get a tackle for a loss, so you're only going to go 1 yard. So I love his mentality, and I always have all season. Really good example of this. Burst is good. Reading the blockers up the middle is good. I feel for the kid, really. I wish he would have had a rookie season where this is all he had to concentrate on. He shouldn't have been asked to be trying to play as many snaps offensively early in the season as he was, and it probably took away a little bit from his just focus on this. But if this is enough to keep him on the roster, for the foreseeable future, he's got a job. I think he's the guy, especially as a punt returner.
I mean, that's why that's why they drafted him. They were in love with him as a punt returner.
Keep him there, man. I would want him all game sitting on the sideline and just stewing about when am I going to get my shot? When am I going to get my shot? When is the defense going to force a punt? That was me my redshirt sophomore year. I wasn't playing much on offense here and there in the slot, and I would just be on the sideline just like, can't wait. Like, come on, guys. Can't wait. Because your mentality is different. You're like, this is my chance to make a play. I'm not going to just take it lightly, go out there and fair catch some football. And I don't think that's his mentality. So hopefully he gets more games where he can just solely focus on this, and then it can become a threat.
Yeah.
But he already is a legit threat. I mean, he outkicks his coverage here just a taste. He's getting a good job by the gunners, and then he makes that first initial cut that's great. And I'll go to my grave with this one. Like, Reeves is one of the best players on the team.
Yeah,
and I'll just say it like that.
They love him.
He is great on special teams, and he is your best secondary player, and I don't think it's close. If I'm redrafting your Washington team and you make me take somebody in the secondary out of the guys you got, I'm taking Reeves, the first one. This guy plays on every play, and he's smart. You can tell he's smart. He's always in the right spot. He's never out of position. I don't think he's ever making missed assignments. He's helping other guys communicate. How he hasn't been the starting safety all year, I don't know why Will Harris was starting over him to start the season.
He went to the Pro Bowl. He's gone to the Pro Bowl, I think, twice as a special teamer.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that.
Yeah.
And I snapped back to, why hasn't he been starting at safety?
Yeah.
He's your best secondary player. He is. And I'll stand on that hill.
On the punter here on this play, first of all, did you see what they did in their formation before the punt? Watch the end zone view. Pre-snap.
Okay.
What are they doing there?
This little shift? Yeah.
It's 4th and 20. I mean, are they trying to get an offsides? I'm on 4th and 20. But somebody asked me, and I'm forgetting who it was. Actually, Chris asked me to ask you about this. With the Australian punters, where they move to one side, take a couple of steps, and kick it the way, punt it the way they punt it. What's the difference for a punt returner, with that kind of punt style versus the traditional one?
So it's funny you say that. West Virginia was the first school to really do that in college, and it was against us. And we just started calling it rugby punt.
Yeah.
So my personal experience with it was I would scoot up because at that time it wasn't an Australian guy that practiced it all the time, so he wasn't as effective at it. What my concern was it was going to be lower and shorter, and it was going to roll a lot further. So if I let it hit the ground, he's going to get a 38-yard punt that's going to turn into 52.
Right.
So that was my concern. Don't let it hit the ground. It's going to roll. It should be shorter and lower. And you can't do that in the NFL. Like, if you're going to do the rugby punt, you still got to be doing hang time and getting some depth on it. So I don't think that's the case here. I mean, this thing's still 10, 20, 30, 40, 47 yards in the air. So it looks like he's doing that style of punt, but he's still getting 47 yards with some hang time. I don't think it's as impactful in the NFL as it was in college when it first showed up.
I'm just thinking about something when you brought up West Virginia. Was Pat McAfee at West Virginia when you were at Maryland?
I don't think so. I think he's before me.
Before you?
But I'm not positive.
Okay.
I don't think he is. Yeah.
All right. So
otherwise, I would have taken his punt to the house, which would be pretty cool.
Jalen Lane. I mean, I think one of the things that will really help next year is A, what you said, if you can focus on punt returns solely. B, if the defense forces the other team to punt occasionally, that'll help.
Absolutely.
That'll help a lot.
And it can't be from
the 40,
45.
Exactly, which a lot of the punts this year against Washington have been. All right, let's go to offense. Top three.
Offense, top three go to Terry leading the way. Great job by Terry. Obvious reasons. Making impactful plays when they need them on critical downs. Leads the way. Next is Ben. Ben Sinnott.
Really? Wow.
This is before the big pass that they caught in the fourth quarter. He was still in my top three. He was awesome. Run blocking, really good, and just impactful in the run game for sure. Not so much in the pass game, but impactful in the run. But that, if you watch the route, it was really nice. I said, "Ooh, when he caught that 25 yards cover, he's in man coverage, and he gets the better of him." If I'm Ben, I'm running routes all summer, all off season. If he can become a little better as a route runner and a pass catcher, and then I think he's got a bright future, because if he can run block like he did on Sunday consistently, then you got yourself a real two-way tight end. So that would be, if I'm in his corner, I'm running routes.
Yeah, I mean, with Ertz out, that was the most he's played, in his career.
Yeah, for sure, right?
Yeah.
And he benefited with the strong run game, or the heavy dose of running, but he blocked really well. They put him in some spots where his block was key, like, right, he's got to do the kick-out block on the DN. He's one-on-one with a linebacker coming in the C-gap, and if he doesn't hit the block, it's not going to work. But he did good.
Tell me about Krosky Merritt's day.
He looked good-ish. I like him going downhill. I really like him downhill more than zones and stretches. I think he wants to become straight downhill. But then, how about when he has a chance to ice it at 3:39 in the fourth? Did you see that? Go to 3:39 in the fourth.
He just got tripped up, right?
Well, he tripped himself up. It should be house call. The game should be over.
Where am I going?
3:39 in the fourth.
Got it.
I mean, this is a running back's dream right here.
Yeah, because this would be 86 yards.
Bro, watch the block by Sinnott here, too. He's starting at the fullback.
Oh, yeah. Oof.
He's got the key block here. He puts Carter on his ass with that cut. Now, initially, good cut by Bill, or good vision by Bill. He's patient, and he sees Sinnott put Carter on his ass. And this is every running back, you can ice the game here. You're going 95. You're going 85 here. And he's just not ready for that third level one-on-one. And we talked about it all season.
Yeah.
He hasn't made this juke or broken this tackle all season. But that should be ball game.
I thought that he did a good job after contact pushing the pile. Like, that's not necessarily what we've seen from him. But
he's a hard runner.
Yeah, he runs hard.
Yeah, it goes back to when I said I just don't think he anticipates getting to that third guy, and he just panics.
Yeah,
panics out there, just like on that.
That's a hell of a block by Sinnott on that play.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
that's a great block. I mean, that springs the run for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
And he was doing it from fullback, from tight end. He was doing it when he was pulling. Sinnott had a really good game.
Not only that, he got up and made a second block. I mean, Bill's pass.
Like, that's what you need.
Yeah.
That's the type of you want to see. I mean, am I wrong?
No.
That's what you want to see.
Yeah, of course.
So you're going to get points for that. I mean, the whole offensive line, they just wall this whole thing too. Look at everybody. I gave everybody points on this. Everybody's hitting their double team, getting to the next level. Everything's working. I mean, you could argue the only one that doesn't really touch anybody is Connerly.
Yeah.
He's not really coming in that hard. He's not coming in there to wreak havoc. He's just kind of going through the motions there, but it works. And Bill's got a house call that thing.
His film breakdown yesterday. I thought the comment about Jeremy Reeves, I think we've all known that Reeves has been an excellent special teams player, made a Pro Bowl. I think he did not make it the next year when, remember, he was on the ballot and yet he had been hurt for much of the year. I thought that was a surprising revelation from him. I think he's probably referring more to just the safeties in general than all the DBs, but he's loved a few players all year long before he knew anything about the team. He loved Jacob Martin, loved Chris Paul. He basically called it after the Green Bay game. He said there's no way that they are going to keep, I think at the time it was Coleman and Allegretti in the lineup. They've got to try somebody else. And then once Paul was in there, he said there's no chance that when Cosme comes back, Paul's the guy to leave. Paul's entrenched. He's a starter the rest of the way. Has loved Jacob Martin right from week 2, week 3, said this guy is the, highest motored effort guy. He's been a big Kinlaw fan all season long, no doubt about that. And loves Jeremy Reeves. He's really into the high effort guys. He did talk about Deron Payne. I asked him about Payne because I didn't mention this in my breakdown, but in looking through some of the stuff as he was going through it yesterday, I just kept coming upon, Deron Payne not giving 100. And that's his story. When he gives 100, he's pretty good. And when he doesn't, he's pretty terrible. I can't imagine Deron Payne comes back next year. There is a $17 million cap savings, if they move on from Payne, whether it be by trade or by release. And I don't know what kind of market, can they get a 6th rounder for Deron Payne because of the name? Maybe. But Lattimore saves them $19 million. Payne saves them $17 million. Allegretti saves them a few $1 million. I would assume all 3 of those players are not back next year. And then they got to deal with their own Mariota, Chris Paul, Jacob Martin. I think those 3 are givens. I think McNichols they're going to certainly try to bring back. They don't have a punter under contract for next year, so they got to bring Tress way back. And then you get into Rodriguez and Debo, and even a guy like Burks. Will they make a run at trying to get Burks to sign, a 1-year, heavily incented deal? And then to me, the extensions are pretty obvious. Tunsil for sure. And I think there's a good chance that they extend Luvu during the offseason as well. And that Tunsil deal is going to be a big one. It's going to be a massive deal. But they do not want to enter 2026 with Laramie Tunsil off of the season he had this year after trading for him and have him go into a season where he could reach unrestricted free agency. And the only way to keep him would be more in a confrontational franchise tag setting. I think Tunsil is an absolute top priority for the team to extend him. I'm sure they knew worth a long-term extension or a longer-term extension. Maybe not, but those are the key pieces. I think Ertz, obviously, Eckler, Noah Brown, Wiley, Wise, guys that aren't under contract next year. I wonder if Bobby Wagner comes back. Did we have that conversation with somebody yesterday? I forget. That's going to be an interesting situation. I know where it was. I was on with Linnell last night, and he asked me about it. For all that our fans, criticize with Bobby Wagner, coverage primarily, certainly reasonable. He's out there on every defensive snap for a reason. He is the coach on the field. He makes sure that it can't be any worse than it's been, and it's been pretty bad. And he's an absolute tackling machine. Does he come back and play another year? If he wants to, do we take him back? Do they re-sign him to a 1-year deal? The Wagner situation is going to be interesting. I'm not going to be floored if Bobby Wagner comes back and plays 1 more year here. I'm not. They like him. They trust him. And, other than in coverage, he's a pretty damn productive middle linebacker. All right, when we come back, I've got, I'll let you know if I have a smell test pick. I'm still waiting to see on that. And something Joe Burrow said yesterday, in a follow-up to kind of the very deep, reflective, almost borderline, I'm going to retire thoughts from last week. You'll hear what he said yesterday when we return. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. Don't forget, guys, that you can get your HVAC taken care of by Foley Mechanical. There's the group that I recommend. We had some HVAC issues last year, about 7-8 months ago. Reached out to Foley Mechanical, and it worked out perfectly. Dan Foley himself, the owner of Foley Mechanical, came out, dealt with us directly. He's impressive. The whole company's impressive. He owns 100% of the company. It's not a franchise. It's not some big private equity firm. He controls the quality, start to finish, from the equipment to the people he hires. His team is first-rate, professional, skilled, and sharp. Foley Mechanical is full service, heating, air conditioning, hot water, and boilers. And they're the go-to for older homes with radiator heat, a real specialty. They work across the DMV, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and they proudly install Amana HVAC equipment. If your system needs help like ours did, I highly recommend that you call Foley Mechanical. If you want it done right, FoleyMechanical.com, or call Foley Mechanical and tell Dan Foley, that I sent you.
In your mind, where you're not the quarterback of the Bengals next year?
I can't see that, no.
Did you ever thought about the possibility of not being the quarterback here during your career? Or
You think about a lot of things.
when you look at quarterbacks over the course of their time, great ones, Peyton, Brady, you kind of have to understand that you never know what this league will bring. And what did you learn from watching how their careers unfolded?
Yeah, a lot of crazy things happen every year. Micah Parsons got traded right before the season, I think this year. That is something I hadn't seen in a long time in the NFL. So crazy things can happen.
That was Joe Burrow yesterday in Cincinnati. You know, last week there was a very kind of self-reflective, melancholy-esque press conference in which people walked away from it thinking, is he retiring or is he trying to set himself up to be traded? And so there was more follow-up this week. By the way, he's playing in these final 3 games for the Bengals, despite being eliminated. They're 4-10. They really got trounced by Baltimore last week. And even though he had, the turf toe and the turf toe surgery, the plan is, according to the Bengals coaching staff, he's going to play these final 3 meaningless games, your franchise quarterback. But you never say never, but when you have a guy, you don't move on from that guy. Like Cincinnati has the guy. Joe Burrow's the guy. The problem, of course, with Joe Burrow is availability. So the conversation we've had around here recently, but still, when he's available, he gives you your best chance to be a contender. And they have been to a Super Bowl. They've been to big-time late season playoff games when they've had him, and they've had him healthy. Man, I actually thought this was a chance this year for Cincinnati, if he stayed healthy, to be much better. We knew they weren't going to be very good on defense, but they brought Higgins back. They signed him. They signed Chase. They'll have the same outlook heading into 2026. It'll all be about Joe Burrow's health and whether or not they can get just marginally better on defense. That's kind of the same conversation we're having here. One big exception, we have a lot more in terms of needs. We don't have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. We don't even have Chase Brown in the backfield. But yeah, Burrow's an interesting listen every week. No smell test pick on either the NFL game or the college bowl game tonight between Arkansas State and Missouri State. But the number is shifting around. Seattle got all the way up to a 2-point favorite after being a 1.5, 2-point dog. It certainly looks like Davante Adams is not going to play. That is impactful. The combination of Nakua and Adams is lethal. It's right there with Higgins and Chase. The weather's supposed to be, raw, windy, rainy. It's been raining out in the Pacific Northwest all week. That line went from Seattle +2 to Seattle -2, and now I'm seeing primarily Seattle -1s, a couple of 1.5s everywhere. Davante Adams, at his age, still a massive factor in things like point spreads. One of the few non-quarterbacks still that they pay attention to. And I think the Rams are just viewed as almost unstoppable with Nakua and Adams, and a little bit more slow downable anyway without one of them. Should be a hell of a football game tonight. You like the Rams, right?
I do. That's where I would probably be laying my money. I mean, I think it's still, you said what, Seattle's 2.5-point favorite right now?
No, they're down to 1.5.
Down to, okay, so it's back down to a pick 'em. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the Rams then if we're going straight up.
Yeah, it's 1.5. So it's not a pick 'em yet. But yeah, I don't have a good feel for it at all. I think Seattle at home's always very, very difficult. Should be a hell of a game and may determine the 1 seed and where the NFC playoffs have to go through. We're done for the day. Chris is next.